Anyways, we definitely have to talk about this before the beta ends, and that is drive impact. This is the biggest topic about Street Fighter 6 right now. Everyone's loving the game. The main concern from seeing from so many players is drive impact, and people are already asking for balance changes on day minus before the game is out. A lot of people are not liking drive impact. They're saying it's unga, people are just throwing it out. It's not footsies. I think we should go a little bit more in depth on drive impact, and especially on how to counter it to make sure everyone understands, because I think a lot of people don't know how to counter it. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is everyone's playing this game like Street Fighter 5. I don't think this game is like Street Fighter 5 at all. When you're playing this game like Street Fighter 5, you're gonna get blown up by drive impact. So one of the first things about drive impact that you have to understand is the awareness part of it. So when you're playing against your opponent, you can't just chuck fireballs up close like this. There's going to be a threat of drive impact if you do things very telegraphed. What drive impact helps is they make it so that you have to remain unpredictable and you cannot flowchart. Once you start flowcharting in this game, you will get blown up by drive impact. So if I notice a Ryu player is throwing a lot of fireballs up close, I'm going to eventually just drive impact him and blow him up for it. So it doesn't mean you can't throw fireballs anymore. He still has to like guess when you're throwing a fireball with drive impact. You just have to be more unpredictable with it. You can throw the fireballs further away, right? Or you can be a little unpredictable and bait it. Because at any point, if your opponent guesses wrong and does a drive impact, you can easily react to it and just do your own drive impact. It's slow. It starts up in 26 frames. It's like half a second. As long as you press the button, it starts up, the armor starts up on the first frame. So another thing too is that a lot of players, they have their fingers resting on the throw buttons, which naturally every Street Fighter player, if you play 4 or 5, you're gonna do. That's like your go-to buttons, right? If they dash in. But the dashes are slow in Street Fighter 6. They're 19 frames. That's like one of the fastest dashes in the game. It's 19. Jerry's dash is like 22. So you don't have to worry too much about the dashes anymore. You can have your brain focused on drive impact. And your fingers should be resting on the heavies now. Heavy punch and heavy kick. So that when you see that flash of them doing drive impact, you can do yours. Now a lot of people will compare drive impact to like crush counters or V trigger or something like that. But drive impact has risk to it, you know? Like crush counter has no risk. And V-Trigger has no risk. The risk of drive impact is also getting hit by drive impact. It counters itself, you know? So if someone lands a drive impact and the other opponent sees it, you're gonna get hit just as hard. So that's another thing to consider. And back to the awareness thing, the corner is when there's a really interesting meta with Street Fighter 6. And that's when the opponent has you close to the corner. On your mind, you need to be focused for drive impact. And this is for both players. The defending player can use drive impact, and the player who has the opponent in the corner can use drive impact to splat him against the wall, right? It adds this interesting kind of mind game because you can't just do drive impact raw. That's very risky to do. Because if the opponent is mindful about it, and remember this is day minus, once this game's out, everyone's going to be thinking about it. He's just going to drive impact you back and blow you up. So you have to be tricky about it. You can try to cancel a normal into it, right? You can wait for him to press it first, just like kind of flinching, and then you drive impact him back. But I feel like a lot of players are just not thinking about drive impact that much. And when you do, I think it makes the game really fun because drive impact has so much presence. It causes a crazy mental stack. And I've had some amazing matches in this game, in ranked, where both of us knew about drive impact and we're both kind of just sitting in the corner, like being very careful, and it's very tense and overwhelming. And I like that. I think that's very fun. And when you're in Burnout, you know, one of your only options to defend yourself is to jump, right? Because you have no mechanics. You pretty much have to jump or you risk throwing, right? You neutral jump, but if you neutral jump too early and he doesn't do it, he could just like uppercut you for jumping. Like he'll jump and you just like walk forward and DP him. Or you get hit by the drive impact anyways, you know? when you land. So let's talk about the counters of drive impact too, because I think a lot of people are not understanding that as well. So first off, you can throw it. So you can throw drive impact. And when I say throw it, I mean like throw it far. So even if you're in Burnout, and by the way, if you're in Burnout, it's harder obviously, but you can throw it. There we go. You can throw it. Another thing, people know this, but they haven't, like a lot of people you need to think about it, is that it has 3 hits, it has 2 hits of armor. The 3rd hit will break it, okay? So if you do 2 jabs, 2 hits, it still hits me, right? But the 3rd hit, it breaks it on the 3rd hit. Sorry, I gotta make it look really clear. I keep pressing 4 jabs. There we go. The 3rd hit breaks, okay? So there's a lot of moves in this game that can break it and do 3 hits. You just need to know what they are. A really easy example is Jamie. Jamie has standing heavy punch that's 3 hits. This move is literally made for blowing up drive impact. So if the opponent does drive impact, 3 hits, easy punish. And this is good once Jamie's in Burnout or whatever, right? The move is made to blow this up. It's very cool, and it's something that, once again, you need to be aware of. The other is stacking hits, right? So like, just like the chat is saying, like Ryu, crouching medium kick, OD fireball, right? OD fireball is a good example. I just need to figure out, like, there, crouching medium punch is faster. So crouching medium punch. That will blow it up. You can do super from it too. Like this, and blow it up. The other thing about drive impact is that supers blow it up. It completely nullifies it, the armor. So you don't have to worry about absorbing supers. Supers will have no problems against it. So this is also important to know when you're put into Burnout, because when you're in Burnout, once again, you can't do your own drive impact, so you have supers. There's a lot of things you can do. You can use an invincible special to blow it up, right? Even if your invincible special is mistimed, you'll just kind of go above them, right? You can parry it. You're +3, I think, after. Yeah, +3. So it's your turn. You can perfect parry it, obviously, right? If your timing is good. But obviously, drive impact is the go-to. If you have meter, use drive impact. Now, like I said, a lot of people know about these 3 hits, right? But I think, once again, people are playing this like Street Fighter 5. So one example is people using drive impact on Wakeup. So when you knock your opponent down, say you're Ryu, a lot of people like to go crouch and light kick, like this. Meaty crouch and light kick, right? The reason they're doing this is obvious. You're hitting low. You want to hit them low. You want to check their toes when they're getting up, right? You might as well. You have a meaty. But the problem is you can't cancel your light kick. It's not a cancelable normal. So since you can't cancel out of it, you can't get into drive impact. And if the opponent does wake up drive impact, you're gonna get blown up. You might not have enough time, right? If you go crouch and light kick. But if you do crouch and light punch instead, that is cancelable. You're gonna have enough time no matter what. You just see it and you press it. And this goes for block strings too. Same thing. Like, if you're block stringing someone, you usually go crouch and light kick. You can get blown up by drive impact without worrying about it. So this is like the trade-off. You can go for a low, which is technically stronger because it hits them low, or you can do a less risky approach and do crouch and light punch because it's cancelable, and you can defend yourself with drive impact. The same thing with drive rush. So when I drive rush on Ryu, if I drive rush like this and go crouch and light kick, that's really good because it hits low, right? I can go like this and combo. But if the opponent does drive impact that's trying to stop me, I'll get blown up for it because I can't cancel my crouch and light kick, right? So if I use crouch and light punch instead, I'll always have enough time. The screen slows down when the drive impact armors because the game is giving you even more time to counter it. So this is what I mean, like, you have to try to get out of that Street Fighter 5 mindset and kind of look at the game in a different way. to counter drive impact. Now, in terms of playing neutral or playing footsies, there's some particular normals that are really good, but not special cancelable. So, for example, Ryu standing medium kick. It's got great range, and it can blow up low attacks. But the problem is it's not special cancelable. So if I'm poking with this thing, I can get blown up for it because of drive impact. So, as good as it is, you don't want to use it too often. That's why you have to mix it up with cancelable buttons, right? Like your crouching medium punch or your standing medium kick. So if the opponent does do it, you can react with your drive impact. So I'm not saying you should never use, you know, these buttons. It's just that you have to change it up, which I think drive impact is a great way of doing that. So even if a button is particularly powerful and it's kind of like an all-around good button to always use, you have to consider its use against drive impact as well. Another really common thing that players do when they play like Street Fighter V, once again, is they try to do safe block strings with gaps in it, right? So Ryu will go, you know, low forward fireball a lot. So if you're constantly doing strings like this and being too predictable, yeah, the opponent's gonna blow you up. So you have to change it up. So for example, with Ryu, you can do your palm instead, and this is a true block string. So when your opponent's mashing it up, then you can counter him back. What drive impact does, the bottom line is that it's to ensure that every round feels different. And you're not flowcharting, you know, that's a big deal. And it helps stop Unga, you know? Like, there's gonna be moves, there already is a couple moves in this game where people throw it out because it's relatively safe, relatively low risk, and drive impact is gonna help prevent that. So as much as people, you know, talk about it, you know, it's anti-footsies because people are just throwing it out mindlessly, once you learn how to counter it properly, it's actually a great tool for yourself to force people to play footsies with you, because it helps you stop flowcharts in itself. Okay, so let's talk about Burnout now. In Burnout, it's very dangerous because obviously you can get stunned, but you gotta remember the normals do much more block damage, or block stun, sorry. So you're +3 instead of like minus and +4 and all of that. So you're really minus when you're in Burnout, and Capcom did that on purpose, because now if you cancel the drive impact, you might not even have time to jump. Like if Ryu tries to jump, there'll be really tight block strings where you can't even jump out of it and you're like checkmated. And a lot of people, you know, don't like that. But to that I say, you shouldn't be in Burnout in the first place. That is the downside of being in Burnout, you know. The thing is that drive impact is strong. It really is. But there is a counter to it. But it has to be strong, because if Capcom nerfs it and they make it weak, it diminishes kind of the whole system of the game. Burnout needs to be deadly. When your opponent's in Burnout, it needs to be super scary. You're on the brink of death. Just like in Street Fighter V or any other Street Fighter, when you're close to stun, you're on the brink of death, you know? You're like, well, what happens if I'm one hit away from stun? What's the counter to that? Well, don't get hit, right? Just like don't be put in Burnout. And if they nerf that, it makes Burnout just not as threatening. It makes it so that managing your meter and not just mindlessly spending it on everything has some type of impact. Now, on the other side, you know, there is some things about drive impact that I agree with, even though it's really early. One thing is that visually, it's hard to distinguish between drive impact and drive rush, because you're just looking for a glowy effect and they're both moving forward towards you. So there is a lot of times where the opponent does drive rush on me raw, and I instinctively think they're doing drive impact. So there's that. Another thing people are saying it should cost more. I think the bottom line is about drive impact is that it's really easy for Capcom to tune it. It's not a mechanic that's going to require tons of rehashing and balancing, like something like crush counter or V trigger, because crush counter is complicated because every character has different crush counter buttons, different combos they can do from it that are character specific to their kit, right? And V-Trigger is even more complicated because of that. But drive impact is simple. It's the same for every character. It starts up the same speed. They can tune the startup. They can make it a little slower. They can make the visual effect more obvious. They can make it cost more drive meter, etc., etc. They can add more scaling to it. it's very easy for Capcom to balance it and put it in a good spot. And I don't think it's a big issue right now. I'm not saying you should never have concerns or complain about anything, because it is a beta and Capcom is looking for feedback. I strongly feel that, you know, players need, you know, these things need to be hashed out. You know, fighting games are really complicated. We can't just ask for balance changes on a closed beta at -1, especially when I feel like players aren't exploring the options on how to counter drive impact, and they're still playing this game like Street Fighter 5. I think it's really important that we all consider that. One last thing too is the lockout system. If you drive impact somebody when they're in block stun, in other words, when you do it in a perfect block string like this, you'll get a lock, and it makes it so that you don't stun the opponent and they're okay. So there's things like Kimberly's bomb shurikens detonating as you do drive impact, Blanca's toy when we get Blanca. You can't force someone, they can't checkmate them that way. So Capcom did think about that, so just pointing that out too so you guys know.